Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Snack Chats at TLB Nutrition Therapy. We're really happy to have you here today. My name is Marcie, and I'm the pediatric team lead dietitian at TLB.
And my name's Curissa, and I'm one of the dietitians at TLB.
Yes. Well, we're really excited for today's conversation. We're going to be talking about neurodivergence and nutrition, different considerations for this population, how it affects eating, and just all things of that manner. We are very aware this is a big topic. This neurodivergence is a really big umbrella term, and there's a lot of complexity and nuance here. And so we do know that with our conversation today, we'll kind of just be scratching the surface. But with neurodivergence, this phrase is typically used to describe brains and neurological functions that are different from a typical brain. And like I said, this includes a large number of diagnoses and experiences. But for the sake of today's conversation, we are going to be focusing on autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and any accompanying sensory struggles. And we work with a lot of clients with these diagnoses, and we know how much they impact food, which is why we are wanting to make this video. And at TLB, it's incredibly important that we're as neurodivergent affirming and informed as possible. So yeah, anything else you want to add, Curissa, on our little introduction with neurodivergence?
Yeah, I think that was perfect. Yeah, I'm just kind of gonna reiterate what you were saying. Like, we're gonna really talk about the impacts on food and nutrition with, dealing with neurodivergence.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we're gonna start by talking about autism and autism spectrum disorder. And again, this is a spectrum of experiences and struggles with autism, but some of the common features we might see are, needing a routine and structure in life, in many aspects of life. And, there might be challenges with change and flexibility, which can definitely impact eating, which we'll get to in a second. There can also be sensory sensitivities present. So if that is with food or, clothing or other things that the person experiences in their life. And there could also be social and communication challenges. So I know there are, again, a myriad of experiences here, but we're going to kind of focus on these features as they relate to eating. And so what we might see for someone with autism around the spectrum is that they have a very specific food routine. So they have a certain number of foods or types of foods, or maybe even brands of foods that, they want to really, those are their safe foods. And there might be a specific meal schedule or timing, and it can be challenging to be flexible or deviate from those meal times or safe foods. And so something we can really support clients with are with these challenges with rigidity and with trying new foods. So that could be something where we're offering in-session support with food exposures, or offering guidance and counseling on navigating different different life situations where eating is happening. And then something else we can see, right? I mentioned the sensory sensitivities. This can be very common with food. So there's a very highly sensitivity to taste, texture, temperature of food. Again, someone might, have a very specific brand that they're wanting to consume or stick with. Some people might be super tasters, so they can taste a lot of nuances in the foods they're eating that maybe other people are not aware of. And there is overlap with the eating disorder diagnosis of ARFID. This is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And we do have some other videos on ARFID, so please check those out if you're interested. But we can see overlap with autism and ARFID kind of commonly. We can also see challenges with eating out or eating while traveling, again, like disruptions to eating or timing and what foods are available. And then a couple more things like physically with the body. So individuals with autism might experience low interoception. So interoception is like a connection to our body and awareness of internal cues. So they might struggle to connect with hunger and fullness cues, cues for thirst, things like that. And we'll talk about nutrition strategies for that shortly. And then the last piece here is that people with autism can experience more digestive and GI issues. So that is something we're going to be keeping in mind too, as dietitians. Carissa, is there anything you would add to that section or anything that jumped out at you that you like talk to clients about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when it comes to working with clients, there is a lot of that um, identifying food rituals almost, like what's the regimen, the ritual that's often followed, and then how can we gently challenge that? How is it affecting quality of life, right? Like always looking at quality of life. You
Yes.
mentioned eating out, social events around food. That could definitely affect someone's quality of life. So that could
Yes.
be a place where a lot of, in my experience, where clients have wanted to start, or it's
Yeah.
even like motivation to start.
Totally. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that for all ages of like kids. They're, wanting to be able to go on school trips, or adults are navigating work meals, and so that social piece can be huge. But I do really appreciate you bringing up quality of life, and some aspects of someone's eating, maybe it is very ritualized, but it's fine. It may not impact their quality of life. And so I think it's important to say too that when we're working with clients, we're not trying to change their entire eating pattern, but like you said, kind of work with them to identify how it's affecting their quality of life and where improvements can be made.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you adding that. Um, so moving on to our nutrition strategies for autism and really neurodivergence as a whole. Um, if someone is not experiencing those hunger, fullness cues, the interoceptive awareness, then we as dietitians can support folks with mechanical eating or logical eating. And so this is maybe implementing a meal plan or meal structure to where the client has meal consistency, they're having regular meals and snacks, even when hunger cues are not present. I think what, we probably both hear a lot is people are like, well, I'm not hungry, so I don't need to eat. And so it's like, well, even if that cue is not there, the body is still needing food at regular intervals. And then sometimes what can happen is if people are going too long without eating, then they do hit those really intense hunger cues, or it kind of gets to like a hangry point, which we've all been there.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so mechanical eating is really important.
And I think I would add to that, Marcie, too, like something I really like to talk about clients with is even just helping them understand that there's a difference between hunger and appetite. And
Mm,
appetite is usually what helps us drive food choices of like, oh, this sounds good. I want to eat this versus like hunger is if we haven't eaten within like a certain time span, like we probably are hungry. We are hungry. Like it's more fact, and appetite is usually what it's hard for people to connect with. And I found
yeah,
like, yeah, my clients just that's kind of like an aha moment for them.
yeah, that's super helpful. And something you're making me think of too, we do have a resource on the website, that's a hunger fullness
Mhm.
handout. And so on our hunger fullness handout, we do have, or I'm sorry, it's a scale. I'm missing a word, hunger fullness scale. So we use this with clients, to help them kind of rank their hunger fullness from, physical cues, but we do have a side of that is more logical, or meal timing if those cues aren't there. And so that is available on our website for anyone that would find that helpful. So we talked about mechanical eating. The next thing we really want to do is really prioritize safe and preferred foods to meet nutrition needs, right? So we can work on the food exposures or expanding variety or flexibility, but at a baseline, we really want to make sure our clients are totally nourished. And oftentimes that's a lot of validation that it's okay if they're eating foods repetitively, or they don't have a huge variety, because really the foundation of this work is that they are nourished, and from there we can add these other layers on. And then, yeah, I think, again, ways we can support, right, are just working with a dietitian on the variety piece, maybe doing food exposures in session or planning them outside of session, and then, talking through what support is needed in social situations. And so again, just scratching the surface, but Curissa, I'm going to pass it over to you now to start talking about ADHD.
Yeah, so ADHD. I'll start with some of the common features of ADHD. There is one of the common things is inattention, being easily distracted. Struggles with organization and procrastination can often come up. Impulsivity is another. And then highly sensitive, like being highly sensitive to maybe like feedback or to a certain conversation. So just like getting triggered a little bit more easily. And then time blindness, which all of these can definitely affect eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how ADHD affects food and eating, forgetting to eat throughout the day, I think is probably one of the biggest client reports that I get, especially for clients that are on like a stimulant medication.
Yes.
That's gonna, yeah, decrease that appetite. So yeah, it's very common. Again, that low introspection of feeling connected to our body, hunger, fullness. So it's hard to identify maybe when yeah, you're feeling hungry, and even fullness in that too, of like when can you slow down, which I'm sure, Marcie, we can then go to like the topic of sensory seeking a little bit there too. Yeah, struggles with organization, that's gonna impact like grocery shopping, meal prepping, cooking. I think talking with a lot of clients too, there is this idea that like you look up a recipe, it says it's gonna take 30 minutes, and 30 minutes is probably what a lot of people have capacity for, maybe to like cook dinner. But for like some people with ADHD, they really struggle with the organization and timing. And so a 30-minute meal could turn into it taking like an hour long to prepare.
Right. I will say with those recipes, sometimes I am also fooled by the time. I'm like, what do you mean this was supposed to take 20 minutes? This took me way longer. So
That is so
we are all working at different paces.
yes. Yeah, and I think that's our like skill set. And I'm so glad that you share that anecdote too, because I think people with ADHD, and so full disclosure too, I also have ADHD. So this is like I'm talking through some lived experience here too, but I think for us with ADHD, we can really almost blame our ADHD. It's like, oh, it's because I'm ADHD that I can't do these things. And that really reinforces the idea that I'm not good at meal prepping, I'm not good at taking care of myself, and that can just kind of snowball into really negative thinking. And so I think it is so true that even with ADHD versus more neurotypical, like everyone is just struggling to figure it out. And it's a skill set, and skills can be built.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing some of your own lived experience, Chris. And I think that can just be so powerful in this work. And I'm sure for you, like connecting with clients, like having that connection there. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the stimulants. And I know we talk to clients about that all the time. Like the hunger is suppressed during the day, and then when the medication wears off, it can just come back with a vengeance. And so that is also, and a lot of what we're talking about in this autism section and ADHD section, they just cross over, right? So this isn't specific to ADHD, but that's another reason we really work with clients on mechanical eating, like especially if they're on a stimulant, because they really might not feel hungry. But if they're not eating regularly through the day, that hunger is going to hit so intensely later on, to where maybe then they're eating really quickly and maybe eating more than they would normally. And then maybe they're really full, right? So the consistency is so important with the stimulant medications. And that is something a dietitian can definitely help with.
Yes, 100%. And then just like adding on to that, that's where we see a lot of like the digestion issues occurring too. So yeah, that stimulant medication. I mean, with a lot of clients too, there is that like, a dietitian can help support someone who's really weighing the pros and cons,
Right.
especially if someone else is coming in with eating disorder, disordered eating along with this and really trying to decide if medication is appropriate for them or not. It really is that weighing out the pros and cons.
Right. And yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, for a lot of clients, maybe they have ADHD and they're also dealing with an eating disorder. And so we do really need to consider, right, the benefit versus harm of a stimulant medication at a certain time, depending on their nutrition goals and their health. And so, yes, a dietitian is a great person to help kind of assess and, see what's appropriate at the time.
Yeah. I also want to touch on sensory seeking. I think that it's something that that people experiencing neurodivergence in general tend to have. And so sensory seeking is this seeking of stimulation through, um, it can be through like food for sure.
Yep.
Food is all senses are used in food. And so food's definitely one of the things, but also like touching like fabrics, texture. People can
Yep.
see
I've got
different.
my I've got my little squishy toy right now.
Yes, great example. Um, but yeah, from like a food standpoint, sensory seeking for these individuals can be a way that um someone is even like trying to regulate themselves, especially if they're like really dysregulated. And oftentimes that can look like going towards like more sweet or crunchy foods in a way to like help regulate a person's nervous system. Um, and
Yeah,
sometimes like for some people that can be really challenging for them because it just maybe, yeah, it like decreases the variety. They don't have a lot of options. I know for ADHDers, there's a lot of like hyperfixation foods. Like I
yes.
deal with this so much. So much. Like I think this is like the crux of my lived experience in working with clients of like I know exactly what you're saying, hyperfixation food, or just even being able to like kind of name that and call it
Totally.
out. It's like, hey, yeah, you went to Subway, 3 times this week. Like maybe it's a hyperfixation food and
Right.
working with clients to kind of navigate that, naming it. Sometimes it's like, hey, like, yeah, this is what you have capacity for right now. You like it, it's nourishing you, and we can touch on it when you have more capacity. Because I know for a
Yeah.
lot of those people too, they don't want to burn themselves out on the food.
Right, right. And I think this brings us to another thing I know we wanted to loop in about capacity for cooking, but like the spoons theory, which is there's a great like story you can read about it, but essentially the person that came up with this, she for her chronic illness, described the amount of energy she had as spoons. And you've got a certain number of spoons at the beginning of the day. And this is with neurodivergence or chronic illness or really anything. And, needing to be protective of your spoons or also recognizing, right, your capacity and especially what that looks like with food, because that can be so time intensive and energy intensive. And so being really gentle and compassionate with yourself and recognizing, yeah, what do I have the spoons for? What do I have the capacity for with cooking or with nutrition right now?
Oh, yeah, love the spoons theory. And yeah, capacity. I probably say that word like 100 times a day.
Me
What's your
too.
yeah, that's the capacity that you have to do this. And I think that that language also helps clients show up because there is with autism and ADHD, there again going back to my main point of there is a lot of limited thinking that can often show up around like I'm just not going to be able to do these things because of this. And again, I think it reinforces that sensitivity factor. Um, And when we can just like name those things and identify them and help clients kind of walk through that instead of going at it from an angle of like judgmental and very stigmatized, it's a very healing process.
Yeah, and I think it can really decrease the person's shame or judgment around their eating when we're just naming these things, we're normalizing, maybe we're laughing about them a little bit or sharing that lived experience. It's like, okay, let's meet you where you are and, make sure you're nourished and just, normalize that there are a million different ways to eat. And really, what we're doing as dietitians for any of our clients, especially our neurodivergent folks, is just supporting them and finding a way to eat that works for them, supports their needs, supports them socially, right? So, yeah, we really just want to talk openly about these things and reduce shame and judgment around it. Um, and I think too, like with the spoon stuff and capacity, like this is where your handy dietitian can come in more of like in session. We can do meal planning. We can look at recipes. We can make a grocery list. We can talk you through a meal prep, right? You could do that in a session. And so if that allotting that time to work on things more tangibly while we're also doing other work, I think we all do that with our clients of like, well, let's just do it in session. Let's provide that support and containment and maybe make some of the logistics a little easier. So that is something that nutrition sessions can be a support for. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to talk a little bit more about how TLB can be supportive specifically, but I'm trying to, yes, think, Curissa, if there's anything else I want to add. I feel like we could keep talking for like 3 hours.
Yes, we definitely could. Do you want to mention the support groups at all?
Yes, I was going to mention those. So we do have several support groups at TLB. I offer 2 RFID support groups a week. So one adult, one teen and young adult. And we have videos up about those groups specifically. We have another meal support group and general support group on Mondays. And then we have a really cool kind of art-based group that's kind of a processing group with one of our dietitians, Anna Marie, and they are leading a really cool group of like letting people doodle and do art while they're having support. And so, that I think could be appealing for maybe a lot of our neurodivergent folks of like, that's a setting that feels really supportive.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I guess the
Uh,
like the last things that I'll echo too is that us at TLB, like we are really big advocates for collaborative care. And
yes.
so, yeah, working with an occupational therapist, a mental health therapist, having a physician that understands this, psychiatrist, kind of creating this like team of support for an individual can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have clients that work with autism coaches and like we can collaborate with them or make sure like we're, yeah, all coordinating together to provide the best support for our clients. And so at TLB, all of our dietitians, we specialize in eating disorders. We can work, with RFID and all, we just have a lot of combined experience, lived experience and time. And so if any of this video resonated with you, we would love to have you reach out. So you can reach out on our website if you're interested in learning more or wanting to work with a dietitian. Yeah, we hope you enjoy this video. You can like and comment if you want to keep the conversation going, and we will see you in future videos. Okay, bye.